Let's talk about conducting the first session. You have a plan now. You've taken that plan, you've come to the house, and you're ready to go. In that first session, it's important to know when you walk in the door, what are your goals and themes? Be clear on where you want to go. Manage the session. Be ready to keep it focused. And we frequently talk about this as don't get lost in the weeds. And a thing that I do when things kind of get off track is I do a reset. What I mean by that is I come back to kind of a core central thing I talked about to bring topic back on point. Make sure that you're relevant and you're talking about the things important to the family. Your role is as an active participant. Remember that what's important is that you lead, not follow. Now, we talked earlier in terms of the core principles of FFT about how FFT involves two experts. That means that you have a therapist whose job is to know the pathway of change, and you have a family who knows and is an expert in their life, their values, and what's important to them. It takes both experts, two experts coming together, working in an alliance-based collaborative way to come up with good suggestions and ideas about how to help the family get unstuck. Draw on your core skills. The next sections of the video will be focused on the core skills, but you have a number of core ideas that you'll be able to use along the way in accomplishing the goals of the session. It's important that you keep focused on your goal, and this becomes really important. And so if you keep focused on the goal, that means you're helping the family not go back into the way they would normally talk about things at home. That's actually the only place families know to go, is to what they're used to. You being there, your intervention, your structuring, your responding can help them focus on what's immediate, focus on how they work together, focus on understanding and not misperceiving, learning about each other and what things mean for each other, and then ways to find things to do every day to work around that. Have relational goals that fit the phase. Now, what I mean by that is that if you know the phase, you should know what your goals are. In FFT TCM, it's important to identify case management needs, and you're going to link, monitor, provide, and then translate the ideas that families are getting from other treatments back into their daily life and help extend that treatment. Look for opportunities. The way FFT really goes is that you have general plans and you look for places within the conversation to make your point, to reframe, to develop a theme, to focus on understanding and meaning clarification. Your job is to lead, not follow. That is so important, because if you don't lead and you're empathetic and understanding, the family will like that but not feel as if you've given them anything. If you're not empathetic and understanding, they'll feel like you're not listening and you're directing the treatment for them. In the middle is to direct them on the pathway of change and let them identify what's relevant to talk about. You respond in FFT-based ways. Now, all of this work, as you enter into this room to do this first session, remember that all you're really doing is creating a therapeutic relationship. But it's important to know what that is, because the techniques of FFT very much are just about your relationship with the other person. Now, when I say this, I don't say that you have a comfortable relationship or a good relationship. In fact, it is a therapeutic relationship. And what that means is what you do in the sessions should have an impact on the family. You should change them. You should go in and offer new information and new ideas and new responses to things. Some of what you'll bring are what we call therapeutic attitudes. That's not anything that you do, it's more of who you are. And what that means is that you're able to show and demonstrate and actually feel that you can be in their shoes, that you have a respect for their achievements, a belief in their abilities, that you can focus on the struggle and who they are, not who they've been, that you're willing to help and not just support. That's very important. And that you're willing to be a partner to the family in this difficult process. Those are just attitudes. If you believe these 5 items, you'll be able to create the beginnings of a good therapeutic relationship with a family. Then there are core skills, knowing when and what and where to use those core skills, because they add on top of therapeutic attitudes. Now, therapeutic alliance means being on the same page with the family. What does a therapeutic alliance have in it then? On one hand, there is very much a personal relationship. You kind of like them, you have a sense of respect for them, and they for you. They like you as a person, they respect you, and this personal relationship from the family to you is really based upon the notion of, are you credible? Meaning, do they feel as if you have something to offer them? Secondly, there's an agreement on the goals. I mean, the direction of treatment. I mean, is everybody on board with what you're working on and where you're headed? And then lastly, there's agreement on tasks. Who does what within this relationship? And again, this is where the expertness comes in, because your task and an agreement you have to create over time with them to have a good therapeutic alliance is that your job is to move the process forward, but your job is not to tell them about their values and what's important to them. Over time, they need to begin also to agree that the tasks in terms of moving things forward are on you, but the tasks on tailoring it to their life and who they are is on them. A therapeutic relationship has all three parts, not just the personal liking, but it has an agreement on goals, on tasks, and a personal relationship between you and them. When this happens, you and the family are on the same page. Now, again, within this therapeutic relationship, you have a particular role as an active participant that leads interactions, that focuses the discussions on the phase. Your job is to make what we call events in the room, or things that happen in the room, opportunities to accomplish a goal. Your role is to offer them something that isn't there. You know, many treatments suggest that the families have everything they need to change and that the therapist is just there to somehow organize things in a way that the family can find all the solutions that they've forgotten that they already knew. That's actually not the case. Your role is not to just help remind them of something they tried before that was successful. Your goal is to help them create something new that they've never accomplished before that they'll be able to use in meeting the challenge of everyday life that they have at this moment. It is the phases of the treatment that drive your session goals and objectives. It's not the client, because the phase goals are about the process of change. The client will drive how these occur. It's the model that drives what occurs. This model is not about interventions. It is not about pulling tools out of a toolbox. In fact, in other things, I've suggested that the toolbox metaphor is actually not particularly helpful. What I mean by that is that it is not about how many tools you can have. It's not about developing a larger toolbox. It's about using tools at the right time in the right place according to the plan, not about interventions. It is about goals you're trying to accomplish and then identifying what skill you might use to help accomplish those. The focus is on why you do interventions, not just what interventions to do, because we're going to be asking you what was the goal you tried to accomplish, and that goal is going to be a combination of things you tried to do and the responses that you got. It isn't enough to stop at the point of saying, I intervened with this, this, or this, because that doesn't respond to whether or not it actually occurred and there was good outcomes. You may need to try many different skills or interventions to get to a goal, because at the end of every day with every family, what you're going to get good at is the artful adaptation of interventions to accomplish goals. So again, it's not the intervention, but it's the goal, and if you accomplish it, that's important. Session goals, remember, are those within family mechanisms of change. They're not an end in and of themselves. They're not the solution to the problem. They're building blocks that you put into place along the way. It is not the intervention, but it's the purpose of the intervention that's most important. Here's how it actually looks in the discussion in your first session that you're about to have. There's a problem behavior, a family conflict. There's something relevant to the family they've been struggling with. That's what you need to talk about. Talk about what's on their mind. Talk about what they view as important. From that discussion, put on your assessment hat and begin to think, how does this discussion, what does this tell me about how they work together? So you want to assess from the discussion of what's going on, what's the current risk level? What are the risk and protective factors? What's the problem definition? What are the skills they need to work things out? What are the practical needs they have that may impact whether or not they are stable at this moment? The discussion is about what's relevant to them. In your head, however, you are culling through that information to do your assessment task of identifying risk, protection, and need. Second thing you're doing as they talk about problem behavior is you're thinking, how can I intervene in this discussion to accomplish the goals of engagement and motivation? For example, how can I reframe that statement that person just made to reduce the blame in the problem definition that was part of that statement? So the notion here is that within these discussions of relevant issues in the family, that your thought is, how can I respond next in a way that it is what fills in that blank that is your goal and your purpose, whether that's reduce negativity, reduce blame, help create a family focus to the problem. Therefore, in the discussion of problematic behavior, which is the conversation in the room, you have two things you do. You have an assessment hat. You're listening for the different areas of how they work. And you have an intervention objective, which is, how can you jump into this conversation and do something that changes its course? Something that changes its course in line with the goals of the phase. Families have a number of requirements on them. They have a number of practical everyday needs. These practical everyday needs and requirements will get in the way of them being able to focus on how the family works. We want to take care of both practical needs and how the family works so that we can promote success in the family. Practical needs become barriers, and so the idea is, if we can help them accomplish those, we will help them take advantage of what else we have to offer. At the end of the day, it's pretty simple. If we can provide practical needs, we can help them become more stable. If they become more stable, we can improve treatment outcomes. That each of these activities is helpful, but it is more helpful when it is implemented and done in a way that matches the phase. So for example, as I said earlier, early in treatment, maybe that we provide the information the family needs, because the goal is, if we can get them help, we'll engage them better and we'll motivate them to try. In the middle phases of treatment and in support and our monitor and support phase, the goal here is on helping the family learn new skills. Therefore, case management activities become just a way of extending that learning. In the ending phase of treatment, it becomes a responsibility of the family. And then the goal is, can they keep up their contacts? What other barriers might get in the way and stop them from pursuing things? So we monitor their linkages, we monitor their engagement with needed services, and help them identify things that get in the way and become barriers. The focus is on helping know when and who and where to go for help. That's what provides empowerment for a family. And the clinician's role, your role, is to support the family in their autonomous use of new skills, meaning their self-sufficiency. Now, the last step in this conducting a first session is what you will do when you reflect at the end of the session to make a new plan. This makes full circle your plan, your activity, and now your reflection. After the session, we ask you to complete what's called a progress note. And a progress note is just really a way to reflect and make a plan for the next time. You can review baseline measures to do that. Complete your first progress note. And again, as I said, it's really a way, and it guides you to think about what happened in the session through the lens of FFT. And add your ideas in the progress note to the theme, to the sequence, to reframing ideas, to current risk. And if you continue to do progress notes after every session, what will happen is your knowledge about the family will grow, and your ability and your thinking in a way that matches it very clearly to them will improve. Look at the client feedback. What did they say in the measures they take every session? What are they telling you about the impact they feel, the progress, or the different kinds of alliance levels that they have with you? And then make a next plan. The session planning guide, as we'll talk about in some of the sections in the future parts of the course, the session planning guide is a way right before you go in for you to pull your ideas together and have something that will launch you into that session. It will help you stay out of the content weeds.